Van time video making. You know, when you have a moment where I made a video a couple of days ago in my van about the nature of where we're at in this moment in 2026, and this is like, you know, it's the week before the autumnal, well, let me put it this way, it's the week before the March equinox. For this part of the world, it's the autumnal equinox. For the northern hemisphere, it's the spring equinox, right? I was talking about the nature of how the energies that are here for us to be able to utilize and ride those waves out of this melee, and how much this misdirection, mass distractions happening on a level of, you know, historic proportions already. With the conflicts in Ukraine, the conflicts, I mean, I'm not saying that what's going on in the Ukraine and what's going on in Western Asia, Iran and the Middle East and the Levant isn't a horrific situation. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that what's happening in those environments, if we're not actually having the experience ourselves of being in that part of the world and having these experiences, and it's horrific to be in a situation where these events are happening. Absolutely horrific, right? People are living there because people are actually having suffering and dying. And of course, on some level, on a soul level, those people, I'm trying to avoid this thing, these people that are there having these experiences have made that contract to come and have that experience, right? If you look at it, the most which generates for me, in my experience, compassion and empathy for them, okay? But I hearken back to the fact that I made it quite clear in that video that a lot of that energy that was coming into this this year is a misdirection and a mass distraction from doing the inner work, from turning inwards and riding the wave, right? As Bibu Dev Misra quite rightly said in his book Yoga Shift, you know, if you tune into the wave of what energy is coming in now, as it moves towards, in his perception and his knowledge and his gnosis, which is through his research, ekpyrosis, this age of transmutation through fire horse 2026. The correlations are all there for you to see. And if you look at that and say, like at the end of that book, he says, why not tune into the energies beyond ekpyrosis, the transmutation, and the ascending Dwapara cycle, right? And the ascending Dwapara cycle, which is the Bronze Age in the Greek ages of man, okay? So he makes it quite clear in his book, and I think it's quite beautifully said, that why not attune your energies to that cycle? A time of more virtue, more honor, more integrity, more authenticity, right? Attune your energy to that and ride the wave as the mass distraction and as whatever else comes in, as best you can wherever you are in the world. Like for me, fortunately, where I am, I'm not seeing the chaos that you'd be seeing in West Asia or in Iran or in the Levant or in the Middle East or in the Ukraine or in Europe. You know, I'm not seeing that chaos. It isn't ever present for me. My own sense of chaos and my own world and my own sphere of influence has been happening the last year or so. So I've been going through my own chaos, my own rebirthing, my own recalibration process in the last year, and it got pretty crazy the last few weeks. But what I decided and who I've met in my life and who I've been guided to work with, I have gone back in and channeled the energy back in and doing my own work through body code work, dealing with emotional trauma, dealing with the trauma of my childhood and all those responses and reactions that I would have from being triggered in a place where I have those wounds in my everyday life, and being aware of them, most importantly, in a way that allows me to be able to move through those. But I've also had, through spirit guiding me, bringing people into my life who help me to work through my energy and through this time, to be able to comprehend what I need to do in regards to the work, how I need to recalibrate in order to do the work, my inner work, and where that energy needs to go into, where it needs to go towards. When outside of myself is only fucking chaos, right? With people that are challenging me, triggering me, coming at me is a good way of putting it, right? And I have obviously brought these people into my life as a spirit to do just that, to trigger me to go back inward. I'm looking at it now in that way, right? But I'm reading this book, Arthur Crow 777 Radio, did a podcast on it, Egregores, by Mark Stavish. And the reason why I'm making this video right now is because what I've read in this book just now has made it quite clear to me. Once again, there's these intuitive pings that have come to me through this process in the last few weeks of just being fucking insane. Really like beautiful correlations, beautiful moments. Really show me that I'm on the right path, right? In regards to my own personal experience and my own personal journey. No one else, I never ever would tell anyone else how to live their life. This is my experience and this is my perception of what I'm learning, what I'm experiencing. But let me read something to you here, right? The part of the book I'm reading is called Disinformation. The Devil Made Me Do It. Yeah? Okay? So, and just to give you a foundation for what I'm about to share with you, this is where I'm up to in the book. It basically talks about the nature of egregores and the distraction that an egregore can create. A created egregore within society or within our realm can create the people to misdirect our energy away from doing the inner work and then focusing on the external world around us. And by doing that, what happens then is that evil thrives. Because the people aren't doing their inner work, they're distracted, and therefore that distraction, the misinformation allows the evil to thrive because people aren't doing their inner work, and therefore they're giving their energy over to the evil because they're not doing their inner work. They're misdirected, and in that misdirection, that evil can thrive because it's being fed, right? It's being fed because rather than turning inward, like I said in the video, my previous video, which I will release at the same moment as this one, because I think it's really important to do this right now. I have a lot to say, and this is just my experience, right? You might get some gold out of this, but just listen to this. I'm going to read you a little bit here, right? Okay. Where should I start? Okay, let's start here. I'm going to read you quite a lot of this book because it makes perfect sense to read this to you because, there's a lot in this book that I could easily share with you, but I want to share this with you because it's really quite clear that what I was talking about last week has become, and then in that video I'm going to release for this one, it's quite clear that it's, if you have eyes to see it, you can see it. There's nothing special about what I was sharing with you. It's just there for you to see it, your eyes to see it. Okay. The other role is that of a demon who is controlled and put into the service of good. This is similar to the story of King Solomon controlling demons to build a temple, or the notion within Tibetan Buddhism of the Padma Sabhava, binding demons to defend the Dharma. The most interesting example given to Tomberg, however, concerns demonic influence is simply intent upon distraction. Note, there are also entities from the hierarchies of the left-hand path, right, accused of making use of ridicule, farce, as a means of demonstrating their persecuting thesis. An entity belonging to this later category is known in the Western world. This is Mephistopheles, whose portrait Goethe painted with astonishing exactness. The ridicule which Mephistopheles makes use of has a serious foundation. It is primarily human pretension and snobbery that turns into ridicule. Here is an example of this. At some point, Tomberg tells the story of Hugh Clayton Randall Stevens, describing him as a retired journalist who was financially secure, spiritually indifferent, and living a life of leisure with his wife. Then, in February 1925, he suddenly starts getting messages from an entity who claimed to be the Egyptian god Osiris. Osiris revealed to the journalist all of the ancient wisdom of Egypt that archaeologists had yet to discover, but someday would. Soon Randall Stevens began to draw images, having never drawn before. The style was simplistic yet pompous, and it detailed the struggle between good and evil with the obligatory reference to Atlantis. Several books of this channel material were published by Ryder of London, and, in time, It was articulated that the unsuspected channeler of ancient wisdom was also the reincarnation of the pharaoh Akhenaten. Of course, Tomberg insisted this is not Osiris, but the spirit of Mephistopheles, with the whole revelation only a farce made by him for the credulous, no, for spiritual snobs. The books even contain a note from the author stating that the reason they are being read is not because of their wisdom, for little is there, but because of how the material is communicated is done, in quotation marks, an extraordinary way. It is the fantastic that people are after, not the truth. Spiritual snobbery is a fine phrase for it, and spiritual snobbery is a fine phrase for it, and one that is echoed in a different manner by Jocelyn Goodwin in his book Atlantis and the Cycles of Time, Prophecies, Traditions, and Oral and Occult Revelations, wherein he spends a fair amount of time discussing Randall Stevens, quotation marks, quote, the warning that our civilization is heading for an imminent doom is a favorite refrain of Atlantologists. To a certain cast of mind, often shared by superior intelligences, it always seems that the present day is on the brink of catastrophe because everyone is so wicked, except of course the writer and his or her readers. If we pause for a moment, you find something a little deeper here. It is not just one person who is being distracted from the search for inner spiritual truth or awakening. Inner spiritual awakening or truth. No, it is everyone who reads or comes into contact with a book of such banalities. We also see that evil does not need to control everyone. It just needs to influence the right one. And through this influence, not even control people, simply keep them distracted. These themes are addressed by renowned British philosopher and author Colin Wilson in The Mind Parasites, and by the British author of The Occult, Gary Lachman, in A Secret History of Consciousness. However, with the exception of Lachlan's book, which is largely a restating of Wilson's premise presented in historical context, few writers on the paranormal have approached this critical point. Evil does not need to control everyone. It just needs to keep as many people as possible distracted from progressing on the path. This distraction comes in various forms by the way of media, personal electronic devices, video games, movies, television, music, and sports. Mindless political memes are among the most popular manifestations at the moment. This also means that the creators and the purveyors of these media and the products produced for them are prime candidates for demonic possession. What did I say a few videos ago? And demonic obsession and demonic possession. To effect one of them is to reach millions through them. And that was, on some level, what I was saying in my last video and in other videos before that. That through this misdirection, I've said this for years actually, through misdirection and through distraction, the people are being controlled to look at the world in a very different way. And they're not doing that inner work because they're looking externally, right? The external process of what's happening in their lives. And, it's overwhelming. Trust me, I know this the last few weeks, months, to be overwhelmed by what's going on in the world. I'm very empathic. So when I walk into a room full of people who are feeling a little bit unaligned, I can feel it right away. I can feel the tension. Classic example last week was how I was having a hypnotic session with a woman in Lou Ricks and Huntley in this part of the world. I was having a hypnotic session, and my mother's partner, who is not in a good way, at all, and I think he tolerates me, right? He tolerates me and my family. He tolerates us. This is my perception, and we tolerate him because it's a mutual situation. Not in a harsh way, but for us towards him, we just tolerate him because of the nature of who he is. But when I was in my mother's place, which is his place too, he doesn't like me being in there, right? So when I was having the situation where I was in, this is an example of an external stimuli, I was having a hypnotic session. He kept on coming into the room several times while I was in that room. He knew I was having that, I needed that room to myself. And he could have come in at any time of the day because he had the time to do it. But he kept on coming in and to disrupt my session. And my perception and my feeling was, I could feel the anger that how dare you come into my house and use my house like you own the fucking place. And it wasn't that. I asked 3 days before if I could use that room in the house for an hour, right? And had 1 hour of the whole day. But he knew that I was going to be in that room for an hour. So for me, even though I had this disruption 3 times in the space of like 35 minutes, coming in the room, out again, leaving the door wide open when the door was closed, like he just didn't care. It's his house, right? I respect that. But at the same time, he knew what I was doing. But he didn't care. He made it quite clear that it was like him, it's like a territorial pissing situation. So that external stimuli, that external situation for me could have thrown me, like a month ago, would have thrown me. I would have got fucking pissed off because of the nature of the external stimuli, the situation, which is beyond my control. It would have pissed me off and I would have said something to this guy. But I was like, you know what? The last 2 weeks, I realized my journey is an inward one. So I took the moment to go in, and didn't let his behavior denote how I was choosing to respond to the situation. I just calmly sat in the space of my hypnotic trance that I was under, because I could hear him moving around in the room. It was like he just didn't fucking care. And it was that way. And I was like, yep, okay, I can hear him. I know he's in the room. It's okay. I'll remain where I am in this trance-like state. But that's a great metaphor for life and my perception of the world we're living in the moment. There's so much going on. There's so much misdirection and mass distraction. So it's like in some way the egregores of war, of political figures, of the Epstein files, of the people on the Epstein files, all of these events, all of these mass misdirections and mass distractions on some level are taking people away from doing their inner work and riding the wave, right? In my perception. And that's where the energy has to come back to, in my perception, once again, back to the inner work. Don't let the egregore of the left-hand path, through this mass distraction, through the nature of our society and our civilization, take us away from that. And having said that as well, the whole idea that we are heading towards, in the Atlantean sense anyway, a cataclysmic event, cataclysmic end of civilization, my perception around that is quite clear that there are cycles. And I'm not going to get caught up in them, because right now the energy is there for me to use, rising up. And if you rise up, I mean, you move through ekpyrosis, in my perception, there will be a transmutation, and that has to happen because of the nature of the density. And it feels like to me, like, in my energetic deciphering of what the time we're in right now, is that like they're throwing everything they possibly can to create chaos, and from that chaos, the forces, the powers that be, the non-human forces that are not in our realm, but out of our realm, in the astral and etheric and beyond, are looking to, through the use of demonic possession of their men and women that they have in this realm, to bring in the chaos and the energies of those spirits and those entities from the lower astral that are coming down into this realm, who don't belong here, are trying to hide. And as Wayne McCroy says, looking to hide in people's bodies from not necessarily Judgment Day. He thinks it's Judgment Day. I think it's just the nature of the energy we're moving into. Due to the nature of the cycles. They're looking to hide somewhere because they know that with this cycle, the light of the energy of the ascending process of the yuga cycle is so bright, so powerful, and so encompassing that they can't survive it. They can't live through it. It's too illuminating, right? Even though it's only the Dwapara cycle, the Bronze Age, we're not even in the Satya, the Golden Age, nowhere near it. But the energy is so powerful compared to so bright and light and illuminating compared to the Kali Yuga, which is dense and heavy and low, the lowest of low. They just can't move up through it. They can't ride the wave, so they've got to hide somewhere for 12,500 years. That's why I say, in my perception, the eighth sphere is there for them to hide in, but they need to and they want to have a food source while they're in the eighth sphere, and they need to harvest consciousness and take it across. And that in itself could be perceived as an egregore, the eighth sphere. And that idea I just gave you could be an egregore, because it's an idea that I have in my perception. I've mentioned it so many times before in other videos that it's taking a life of its own if I give it energy. If I give it energy. Of course, I don't give it a lot of energy. I just talk about it in the nature of a statement sense. I don't think about it all the time in order to give it energy to exist. But it definitely it feels that way for me. It feels like this is what it is. It's the mass distraction and misdirection of energy away from the internal, the inward journey, and out into the world that we're seeing at the moment. Because by doing that, the left-hand path can thrive, rather than the right-hand path, which goes inward and then connects inward through the heart vortex to all that is, ever has been, and never will be. Thanks for watching. I truly appreciate it. Mā te wā. I'll see you again soon.